Welcome to episode 43 of Memorial Youth Podcast. This is your host Landon and my co-host Christina.
Hey.
Just a reminder that the purpose of this podcast is to grow alongside you each week as we look into scripture and have a little fun while we're at it. Our first segment is our fun one. What do you have for us this week, Christina?
Well, first of all, happy Valentine's Day. Happy Valentine's Week.
Woo! Valentine's Day!
So, of course, I had to make sure our game had something to do with Valentine's Day. So, we are going to do Valentine's Day rapid fire questions.
Rapid fire questions!
So, some are just like questions. Some is a little bit of trivia. Just roll with it. And you guys at home, be thinking or say out loud your answers or text us or DM us what your answers are. Landon, are you ready?
Rapid fire questions!
All right.
Valentine's Day edition.
Yeah. What is your favorite Valentine's Day candy?
Chocolate. Dark chocolate.
Twizzlers. What is your... Valentine's Day is named after...
Saint Valentine.
Saint Valentine. One word to describe Valentine's Day.
Love.
Love. I was going to say that too. Love. Who will you give a Valentine to this year?
My dog, Sushi. And my wife.
Oh, I was going to say Landon. What would Jesus have given to his mom on Valentine's Day? I think he would. His dad was a carpenter. He was learning how to do carpentry. I think he would have built her like a nice chair or maybe like a plant pot or something like that. I think he would have made her something.
Maybe he would have gotten her a hug and some nice flowers.
Oh, that's nice. Maybe. If you were making a Valentine's Day ice cream, what flavor would it be?
Strawberry. Just strawberry.
I think mine would be chocolate with like cherries in it.
Oh,
that sounds good. If Valentine's Day had an animal mascot, what would it be?
A little puppy?
Yeah, I think mine would be like a little bear, like a little teddy bear.
Oh, okay.
All right, and then the last one is really sweet and meaningful. How can we show people at youth group love?
By talking to them and smiling and introducing ourselves if we don't know them.
Yeah, I think having conversations with you guys is like my favorite part of youth group. So just like getting to talk to you guys is how we can show love and just like being interested in you. And you guys make us feel loved by that too. So that's our game. Happy Valentine's Day. Hope you have a good one. And just remember to show people love today and this week. Now we're going to hop into our scripture.
We're in the middle of our series, A Walk Through the Bible. If you don't know, the Bible's made up of 66 different books, and yet all of these different books collectively tell one story about God's love and redemption of humanity through Jesus Christ. We are exploring that story. Remember that God created the world perfect and good, and then sin entered our lives and the world, and it broke us, and it broke the world. But God has a plan to bring redemption for all of humanity and for the whole world, and He operates this plan through His people. He chooses a people through Abraham. His people are enslaved in Egypt. Moses leads them out. Joshua led them next to the promised land, and then different judges or chiefs led them after that. It was really messy, and the people failed God a lot and messed up a lot, but instead of just turning to God, they said, well, give us a king, and that king will help lead us. The last couple of weeks, we talked about Ruth and how awesome she was, and Boaz and Naomi, and how they lived out their faith every day. And that God was working this plan for this coming king, and not just one, but two. Remember, from the line of Ruth comes King David, who we're going to get to really soon, but ultimately Jesus comes from that same line. But that comes much later in this story. Now we're going back to what God is doing within His people. And we have a story about a woman named Hannah who really wanted to have a child, but she couldn't. She tried for years and years, and she cried out to God and continually prayed all the time for a child. She also promised the Lord that if she could have a child, that she would raise him in the faith and that child would serve the Lord. That's where we pick up with this child who's coming named Samuel. We'll be reading from 1 Samuel chapter 1, verses 19 through 28. Then we'll be reading chapter 3, verses 19 through 21, and then chapter 7, verses 15 through 17. Stay with us. We got a story coming for you, and it's going to build for the next couple months even about the kings of Israel. Here we go.
The entire family got up early the next morning and went to worship the Lord once more. Then they returned home to Ramah. When Elkanah slept with Hannah, the Lord remembered her plea, and in due time she gave birth to a son. She named him Samuel, for she said, I asked the Lord for him. The next year, Elkanah and his family went to their annual trip to offer a sacrifice to the Lord and to keep his vow. But Hannah did not go. She told her husband, wait until the boy is weaned. Then I will take him to the tabernacle and leave him there with the Lord permanently. Whatever you think is best, Elkanah agreed. Stay here for now, and may the Lord help you keep your promise. So she stayed home and nursed the boy until he was weaned. When the child was weaned, Hannah took him to the tabernacle in Shiloh. They brought along a 3-year-old bull for the sacrifice and a basket of flour and some wine. After sacrificing the bull, they brought the boy to Eli. Sir, do you remember me? Hannah asked. I am the very woman who stood here several years ago praying to the Lord. I asked the Lord to give me this boy, and he has granted my request. Now I am giving him to the Lord, and he will belong to the Lord his whole life. And they worshiped the Lord there. As Samuel grew up, the Lord was with him, and everything Samuel said proved to be reliable. And all Israel, from Dan to the north to Beersheba to the south, knew that Samuel was confirmed as a prophet of the Lord. The Lord continued to appear at Shiloh and gave messages to Samuel there at the tabernacle. Samuel continued as Israel's judge for the rest of his life. Each year he traveled around, setting up his court first at Bethel, then at Gilgal, and then at Mizpah. He judged the people of Israel at each of these places. Then he would return to his home at Ramah, and he would hear cases there too. And Samuel built an altar to the Lord at Ramah.
So we've got this whole story about Hannah, who couldn't have a child and finally did have a child named Samuel. And she really does what she said she was going to do. She tells and guides Samuel and offers him up to God, and that Samuel is going to serve God and follow God his whole life. And we see Samuel grows up that way. He serves the Lord. He becomes this judge, and we talked about all the judges before, and he is a good judge. He's serving the Lord and serving the people, and he does so basically his whole life. And we see this beautiful example that even among all this craziness, God is doing good and putting this prophet, which means someone God speaks through, to the people. So God would tell something to Samuel, and Samuel would share that with Israel. And he's like the judge. He's kind of one of the leaders of this community. And we're going to see that God has some really cool stuff he's going to do through Samuel. But I want to talk about his kind of birth and his life this week. So the first thing I want to talk about, though, is his mother's faith, because God hears our prayers. Hannah desperately wanted a child, and she constantly prayed for one. And it was really hard for her. She was depressed at times. She was sad. She was hurt. And yet she didn't give up her faith in God. She didn't give her faith in serving him. And she didn't give up praying for this child.
Yeah, I think that this shows us and reminds us that we can ask God for things in prayer. And that's exactly what Hannah did. She wanted a child so bad, and she continually came to God and said, God, if you give me this child, I will give him to you, for your service. And God, answers her prayer. And I think that is a reminder to us that we can ask God for things, and he wants us to have a good life and find joy in life. But it's really cool that Hannah was I'm gonna give this, my motherhood and my son to you if you provide this for me. So I think that's a good reminder.
And I think it's a reminder too, as well, is that we're called not to just pray once, but to constantly pray for the things that we want, that we need, and that we have, and that those things don't come always right at the beginning. She had prayed for years and years, and instead those things come in God's timing, and we see that here as well. The second point I think we see from this story is that when we offer something to God, no matter what it is, he does amazing things with it. She offered her son, and she's not famous. She's not some royalty or anything like that. Instead, she's this humble woman who serves God, and she says, here, I'm going to offer my son, I'm going to lead him and guide him to you, and you do the rest. And we see Samuel lives this amazing, beautiful life that's like recorded, right? There are 2 books in the Bible named after this guy, right?
First Samuel, Second
Best-selling book in the history of the world, which is the Bible, right? More copies than any other book in the history. And his name is recorded. And he's just this child who's offered. And so what does that tell us, Christina?
Yeah, I think that tells us that we may not feel like we have that much to offer. Like, you are a middle school student, a high school student, like, we're young adults, early on into like our adult life, and we might feel like, oh, we don't really have a lot of resources, we don't maybe have a lot of talent that we know of right now. You may feel like you don't have much to offer to God, but like that is so wrong, because you have so much that you can offer to God. Whatever you have, like, you can do it in the name of the Lord and like give it to him and give your heart to him in those things. So like, maybe that's band for you, maybe that's sports, maybe that's just a hobby that you like to do, maybe that's like serving people or doing a certain craft. Like, whatever it is, you can do it for the Lord, and you can like love people through it. And God sees that, just like Hannah had this passion for being a mother, and she got that and she gave that to God and glorified him through it.
The other point I really want to talk about today is that even though a ton of people in Israel were doing their own thing, they were like, had either turned from God or they were ignoring God, and they were just living the way they wanted. And there was a lot of that going around. We see, even in the middle of a bunch of people struggling to follow God, that there are still people faithfully following him. Mm-hmm. Last week we looked at Ruth and Naomi and Boaz, and this week we see Hannah and her son Samuel, and we see that they're following God to the best of their ability, even though other people aren't. And I think that tells us something about the way we live, right?
Oh yeah, I mean, I think this shows that we can do the right things even when the people around us aren't. So it really shows that this whole country of Israel was like struggling. Sound familiar? Like, our country is struggling through so many different things right now. That doesn't mean that like we don't, or it gives us like a pass to do the wrong thing. Like, we still have opportunities to like glorify God, to love the people around us, and we can make a difference even if it's just in our circles. So I just don't think that should stop us from doing the right thing, from doing good things, even though the world around us is like insane right now.
Absolutely. And so if you see people struggling, just take heart and know that you can do the right thing. You can make the right next decision, and God can use that. Thank you so much for joining us this week on Memorial Youth Podcast. Tune in next Sunday for episode 44 as we continue our series, A Walk Through the Bible. Remember, you are loved by God and you are loved by us. See ya.